On a Wednesday night in February of 2009, a boy named Lucas Abernathy, 8 years old, recovering from a ruptured appendix on the pediatric floor, looked past my shoulder at the empty space behind me and said, "Mister, why is the man behind you crying?" I was standing in the doorway of his room. The hallway behind me was empty. I had just walked the entire corridor. There was not a soul on that floor except me, the night nurse at the station 40 feet away, and the patients in their beds. Nobody was behind me. Nobody was crying. But Lucas was not looking at me. He was looking at a specific point about 6 inches to the left of my head and about a foot above my shoulder. His eyes were tracking something, not scanning, not confused, tracking, the way you track a person who is moving slightly, shifting their weight, breathing. I turned around. There was nothing there. An empty hallway, fluorescent lights, the smell of antiseptic and floor wax that I had put down an hour before. I turned back. Lucas was still looking at the same spot. He said he is really sad. Why is he so sad? That was the beginning of 3 nights that I have not spoken about to anyone. 3 nights that changed what I believe about children, about hospitals, about the things that follow us, and about a man I never met who had died in this hospital 19 years before I was hired. My name is Arthur, 38 years on the night shift at St. Vincent's Memorial Hospital, and this is the one that made me stop pretending I had explanations for what happens in that building after dark. Let me tell you about Lucas first. Lucas Abernathy was 8 years old, brown hair that stuck up in every direction, thin face, big brown eyes that were too alert for a kid who should have been asleep at 2:30 in the morning. He had come in 4 days earlier with a ruptured appendix, emergency surgery. The surgery had gone well. He was recovering. He was supposed to go home in another day or 2. There was nothing wrong with him. No fever, no infection, no medication that would cause hallucinations. He was on a low dose of children's Tylenol for the pain, and that was it. He was sharp, he was awake, and he was looking at something behind me that I could not see. His mother had been there until about 11. She had gone home to sleep and to take care of Lucas's younger sister. She was coming back at 7 in the morning. The night nurse, a woman named Carol who had been on the pediatric floor for 15 years, had checked on him at midnight and found him awake, reading a comic book. She told him to try to sleep. He said he was not tired. She said, "Well, try anyway." She dimmed his light and left. By 2:30, when I came in to empty his bin, he was still wide awake, sitting up in bed, not reading, not watching anything, just sitting there, looking at the doorway as if he had been waiting for somebody to walk through it. I said, "Hey, buddy, you should be asleep." He said, "I know, but the man woke me up." I said, "What man?" He said, "The man who is standing behind you. He has been out in the hallway for a while, walking back and forth. I could hear him through the door. And then when you opened the door, he came in behind you." I want to be clear about the layout of this room. It was a standard pediatric room on the 3rd floor, single bed, 1 window, 1 door. The door opened inward. When I came in, I had pushed the door open with my left hand and walked straight to the bin in the corner. If somebody had been standing in the hallway behind me and had followed me in, they would have been between me and the door. I would have heard them. I would have felt them. The room was not large. There was nowhere for a person to stand that I would not have been aware of. Nobody had followed me in. But Lucas was insistent. Not scared, not upset. Just matter of fact, the way children are about things they consider obvious. He said, "Mister, he is right there. How can you not see him?" I said, "Buddy, I think you might have been dreaming." He said, "I was not dreaming. I have been watching him for an hour. He walks up and down the hallway. He stops at the doors and he looks in. He looked in my door 3 times before you came. He is wearing a white coat, like a doctor coat, but it is old. It looks old. And he is sad. He has been crying for a long time. His eyes are all red." I felt something then. I do not know how to describe it to you except to say that the air in the room changed. Not the temperature, the air, the weight of it. Like the room had taken a breath and was holding it. I said, "What does he look like?" Lucas said, "He is tall, taller than you. He has dark hair, but it is going gray on the sides. He has glasses, the round kind. And he has something on his coat, like a name. But I cannot read it because the letters are too small from here." I said, "Buddy, there is nobody behind me." Lucas looked at me with the patience of a child who knows that adults are sometimes slow. He said, "Mister, he is right there. He is looking at you right now. He just put his hand on your shoulder." I felt nothing on my shoulder, but I will tell you that every hair on my arm stood up. Every single one. And I have been in that hospital for 23 years by that point, and I had heard a lot of things from a lot of patients, and I had learned to keep my composure. But something about a child, a clear-eyed child with no medication and no fever and no reason to lie, something about a child telling you that an invisible man has just put his hand on your shoulder, that gets through the armor in a way that a dying woman's last words do not. I said, "Okay, buddy, I believe you." I did not believe him, but I said it because he was 8, and it was almost 3 in the morning, and I wanted him to feel safe. Lucas said, "You should talk to him. He wants to tell you something. I think that is why he is crying, because nobody talks to him." I said, "I will try, but I need to finish my work first. Can you try to get some sleep?" He said, "Okay, but mister, he is going to follow you. He follows you everywhere. He has been following you since you came upstairs. I saw him in the hallway behind you before you came to my room." I left the room. I finished the pediatric floor. I emptied every bin. I mopped the corridor. And the entire time I had the feeling that somebody was walking about 4 feet behind me. I did not hear footsteps. I did not see anything. I did not feel a hand on my shoulder again. But the feeling was there. Constant. Like being watched by someone standing just outside the edge of your vision, in the spot where you would see them if you turned your head fast enough. But they are always faster. I went back to the night station. Carol was there doing her charts. I sat down across from her. She looked at me and she said, "Arthur, you look like you have seen a ghost." She meant it as a joke. I said, "Carol, can I ask you something?" She said, "Sure." I said, "Has anything ever happened on this floor that you could not explain?" She put her pen down. She looked at me for a long time. The way a person looks at you when they are deciding whether to tell you something they have been keeping to themselves. She said, "Why are you asking?" I told her what Lucas had said, not all of it. Just the part about the man in the white coat. Tall, dark hair going gray, round glasses, walking up and down the hallway, crying. Carol's face changed. I watched it change. Something moved behind her eyes, something she had been carrying. She said, "Arthur, how long have you worked here?" I said, 23 years. She said, "So you started in 86? I said, "Yes." She said, "Then you would not have known him. He was before your time." She told me about a doctor named Philip Ashworth. He had been an attending physician at St. Vincent's from 1962 to 1987, a pediatrician. He had worked the 3rd floor, this floor, for 25 years. He was, by every account Carol had ever heard, an exceptional doctor, beloved by the families, beloved by the staff, the kind of doctor who stayed late without being asked and came in on his days off to check on kids who were going through rough recoveries. In 1987, a year before I started, Dr. Ashworth had lost a patient, a 6-year-old boy named Danny Calloway, leukemia. Dr. Ashworth had been treating Danny for 2 years. He had become close to the family, too close, the way some doctors do when the patient is a child and the child is brave, and the parents are good people, and the outcome is not going to be good no matter what anybody does. Danny died on a Tuesday night in March of 1987. Dr. Ashworth was not on duty. He had been called at home. He came in too late. The boy was already gone. Carol said he never forgave himself, even though it was not his fault, even though there was nothing he could have done. The cancer took the boy. The cancer was always going to take the boy. But Philip Ashworth believed to his core that if he had been here on this floor on that night, he could have done something. He could have bought Danny one more day, one more week. He blamed himself for going home. She said, 3 months after Danny died, Philip Ashworth resigned from the hospital. He did not practice medicine again. He moved away from the area. His wife left him. He had no children of his own. She paused. She said, he came back once. In 1994, 7 years after he left. He came to the hospital late at night. He walked up to the 3rd floor. The night nurse at the time, a woman named Grace, who has since retired, found him standing in the hallway at 3 in the morning, in his white coat, crying. He was standing outside the room where Danny Calloway had died. Grace asked him if he was all right. He said he was fine. He said he just wanted to walk the floor one more time. He walked the corridor, room by room, looking in the doors, and then he left. She said, Arthur, Philip Ashworth died 2 weeks after that visit. Heart attack. He was 61. Grace went to the funeral. She said there were maybe 10 people there. She said it was the saddest thing she had ever been to. Carol looked at me across the station desk. She said, there have been reports, Arthur, over the years. Patients on this floor, usually children, usually at night, who say they have seen a tall man in a white coat walking the hallway, crying, looking into rooms. The reports come in maybe once every 2 or 3 years. Always children, never adults. The children are never frightened. They always say the same thing, that he looks sad, that he is looking for somebody. She said, I have never put it in writing. I have never reported it to administration. What would I say? The kids describe a dead pediatrician walking the floor at 3 in the morning. They would shut this floor down for a psych review and reassign every nurse on the ward. She said, but I have worked here for 15 years, Arthur, and I have heard the same description from at least 5 different children. Tall man, dark hair going gray, round glasses, white coat, crying. She said, it is always this floor. It is always at night. And it is always the children who see him, never us. I sat with that for a while. I did not say anything. Carol went back to her charts. I went back to Lucas's room about an hour later. He was still awake. He was lying on his side, looking at the wall. I said, hey buddy, you still up? He said, yeah, the man left. I said, he left? He said, yeah. After you left my room, he followed you down the hall for a while. But then he stopped at one of the doors, and he went inside, and he did not come back out. I said, do you remember which door? He said, the one at the end, the one that is closed. I knew which room he meant, room 319, at the end of the pediatric corridor. It had been a patient room once. It had been converted to storage about 15 years ago. It was kept locked. I had the key on my ring because I stored extra supplies in there sometimes. I said, buddy, are you sure he went in there? He said, mister, I watched him walk right through the door. He did not open it. He walked through it. Lucas said this the way a child says the sky is blue. No drama, no emphasis, just a fact. I said, were you scared? He said no, he was not scary. He was just sad. I felt bad for him. I wanted to help him, but I did not know how. I said, buddy, you should get some sleep now. He said, okay, but mister, can I tell you one more thing? I said, sure. He said, when he put his hand on your shoulder, he said something. I could not hear all of it, but I heard one word. I said, what word? He said, Danny. I did not go into room 319 that night. I will be honest with you about that. I had the key. I could have gone in. I stood outside that door for about 5 minutes, my hand on the key ring, and I did not go in. I am not proud of that, but I am being honest. The next night, Thursday, I came back to the pediatric floor. Lucas was asleep, finally. I went to room 319. I unlocked the door. I went inside. It was a storage room, shelves of linens, boxes of supplies, an old wheelchair in the corner. Nothing unusual, nothing out of place. But there was something on the floor, against the far wall, that I had not seen before. A small brown teddy bear, old, faded, the kind of bear a child would have owned in the 1980s. It was sitting upright against the wall, as if somebody had placed it there carefully. It was not dusty. Everything else in that room had a layer of dust on it. The bear did not. I picked it up. It was soft, worn at the ears. There was a tag on it, the kind mothers used to sew into children's things. The tag said, Danny C. I put the bear back where I had found it. I locked the room. I went home. Lucas was discharged the next morning. His mother took him home. He was fine. He recovered completely. I never saw him again. The bear stayed in room 319 for years. I checked on it every few months. It was always in the same spot, always clean, while everything around it gathered dust. I never moved it. I never told anybody about it. When I retired last spring, on my final night, I walked the pediatric floor one last time. I went to room 319. I unlocked the door. The bear was gone. I do not know where it went. I do not know who moved it. The room was still locked. The dust on the shelves was undisturbed everywhere, except the spot where the bear had been, which was clean. As if the bear had simply stood up and walked out, the way the man in the white coat had walked in through the door without opening it. I locked the room. I turned in my keys. I walked out of St. Vincent's Memorial Hospital for the last time. On the drive home, I thought about Dr. Philip Ashworth. I thought about a man who loved his patients so much that losing one of them ended his career and then ended his life. I thought about him coming back to the hospital in 1994, walking the corridor one more time, looking into the rooms of sleeping children. I thought about him dying 2 weeks later of a heart attack, which is what they call it when a heart gives up. And I thought about Lucas, sitting up in bed at 2:30 in the morning, watching a dead doctor walk the floor and weep, and put his hand on the shoulder of a janitor who could not see him. And I thought about the word Lucas heard him say, Danny. 32 years after a 6-year-old boy died in his care, Philip Ashworth was still walking that floor, still checking the rooms, still looking in on the children at night, still crying, still looking for the one he could not save. I have been a janitor for 38 years. I have cleaned that floor 1,000 times. I have walked that corridor in the dark more nights than I can count. And not once, in all those years, did I ever see Philip Ashworth. But the children saw him. The children always saw him. And I think that is because the children are the only ones he was there for. He was not there for the nurses. He was not there for the janitor. He was there for the kids. The way he had always been there for the kids. And the kids, because they are children, and because children do not yet know what is impossible, they could see him clearly. I think Dr. Ashworth walks that floor to this day. I think he will walk it until the hospital closes or the building falls or whatever happens to a place when it finally stops being what it was. I think he is doing now what he could not do in 1987. He is staying. He is not going home. He is keeping watch. He is making sure that no child on that floor goes through the night alone. That is what I believe. You can believe what you want. I am Arthur, 38 years on the night shift, and this is the one I carry not with guilt and not with fear, but with something close to comfort, because if there is a man walking the halls of St. Vincent's Memorial Hospital at 3 in the morning, checking on sick children, weeping for the ones he could not save, refusing to leave even after death, then the world is sadder than I thought. But it is also kinder.